Hi, and welcome to Manny's Makings. Today we are going to work on this project together. Hopefully. It takes a little bit of time. I'm using the Rix Loom for this, and it's just a bracelet with a button closure. So I'm just going to show you the button closure. It just works like a normal buttonhole would work. And it's actually done right on the loom. So I just wanted to show you how that works, and that's how it fastens. Now I used vintage beads, and they are from these particular ones. This is Vintage Beads Collection from Fusion Beads, and it has all these different colors in them, which is like lots of fun. And they're all Delicas, size 11s. And so I just used the vintage combination, and this is a tan color in the D-sized CLon, and you're obviously going to need a button, so I dug through my vintage button jar, and I actually had a little 4-pack for 35 cents of these buttons. Never get them now for that price. So yeah, I'm just using a actual vintage button, so it's kind of fun to do a vintage bracelet with vintage beads with Delicas. So we're using Delicas today, which is something different. And you can use size 10, 11, 12, it doesn't matter. Beading needle on today's pony beads, and these ones actually are coming from Eureka beads, but I get my needles from Atomic beads, all kinds of different places. Doesn't really matter. Obviously, you're going to need some scissors. Now, this is really important. So below the Show More button is going to be a list of all the materials, but you also are going to be a list of links for you to see with better camera equipment, and with people with Rick, who actually designed the loom. He has a set of series of videos. I'm going to link you to there, so if you're struggling to see something that I'm doing today in this video and you need to see a little bit closer up or from a different angle with somebody who has professional equipment, please don't hesitate to use those links below and go and check those videos out on YouTube that Rick has, because don't claim to be an expert on Rick's loom, on how to set it up or those types of things, and those are all available for you. And if you have any questions, don't hesitate to ask. So I want to just show you this kind of a fun bracelet. I just sort of made it like a country quilt. I took all the colors and just made it like a country quilt, so that there's sort of a patchwork quilt. It reminds me to some degree, let's see if I can get a better color feed on this. It's not coming in very good, but it reminds me of an old overwashed shirt hanging on a clothesline. They have those, and then they turn them into a patchwork quilt. That's what this reminds me of. So I'm really happy with this and the way that it turned out. It's very not loud, but you could do this with any pattern that you wanted, including Aboriginal patterns, if that was, or Native patterns, if that was something that interested you. More so, you're going to learn about the closure. So you're going to learn how to figure that out and work that out. And I hope you like it, and we'll be back when we get the Rix loom out, and we'll go from there. Okay, so it's time to get the loom set up. So we're using the Rix loom. You can get it from Beadsmith, but you can get Rix loom in lots of different places. And Rix loom is different than other looms because you're not going to have a pile of threads to take care of at the end. And I'm actually going to use this for finishing that you saw at the beginning with the button. So I'm going to make a buttonhole and a button in this. But when you make a buttonhole and a button, you're going to need extra length. So think about a watch band and think about how far past it comes when you're doing that. So if you have a 7.5-inch bracelet, you probably need to do 9 inches of looming. And with a Rix loom, you need to finish right to the edges. So to these 2 bars that are here, okay? So when you get it, if it's in pieces, you have to put it together. There's some screws in the bottom here that can be screwed in, just if you need to put it together. And this here has 2 wing nuts, and the 2 wing nuts loosen off, and that enables you to slide this back and forth. And then when you tighten them up, one goes one way and one goes the other way, so they tighten up against the board. It sets the parameters for these 2. That you get these little rods, and the little rods, I only ever take the one, come with these little plugs, which I tend to bounce all over. That's why I only ever take one off. So they're a rod, and they have these 2 little plastic coggy things, and the rods will there's a magnet at the end that you sit your needle in when you're not working on it. But basically you grab these two little rubbery things, you grab your metal rod and you put it in here. And I just set it up and leave it in there till I'm taking the piece off my loom. And I just try to center it somewhat. It doesn't have to be perfect. I work on this side, so I tend not to leave this as long as this one, only because then I don't catch it with when I'm coming back up to rethread the other way. You're going to get some pegs with it, and the pegs actually have a split in them. Yeah, I don't know if it's going to show there. There we go. See the split in them? There's a split in them, and that split is where you actually have to stick a thread. So I'm going to show you how to put this together. You need a few pegs. I only have a few out. I put everything else away I don't need to have out. The other thing is I talked about this last time, that you can use a ruler or something to start against so that everything's nice and flat. With this one, it makes it much easier because of the way that you warp it. In YouTube, if you just type in Rick's Loom, you're going to see Rick himself, the creator and inventor of this, show you how to do this. So, you know, if you need further instructions, definitely go to him, because I am not an expert by any means. Okay, so let's get started. So the first thing you need to do is grab yourself some, whatever you're going to use for warp. Again, it sort of fits in with the theme of sort of the vintage look. This is just one of those funky colors. I got a tube of this is called Calico Cat on beadshop.com, and it has a whole bunch of different colors in it, including white and black and oranges and bronze and neutrals. And I kind of like it because it gives me lots of options for a lot of the colors that I work with. And it's all size D. So I'm going to use this for my warp thread. But first thing I need to do is set the distance. So remember I said, you know, I'm going to need a 7.5 inch bracelet finished. Well, right now my loom is set up at the perfect 7 inches, but that's if I want to add a clasp or a toggle afterwards. So I need to make it, remember I said 9 inches. So I'm going to have to move this. And I just start spinning. Boom. Because I got to move it back quite a bit. Now this is the bigger version. I figured if I was going to purchase a loom, I was not going to purchase something that wasn't expandable. It's a little bit more money than the smaller one. Well worth getting. It's a little weird to get used to working with it, but I like it. Okay, so this slide just slides back. So I'm measuring with my measuring tape. It's a cloth measuring tape right from where the 0 is. And I'm putting it on the bar, and I'm trying to hold the bar sort of level. So that's 8 there. Got to go farther. So you can see there's quite a bit of looming I'm going to have to do this particular project. And it depends on how wide I make it. I think I'm going to go 9 rows. So, okay. So I just get this set up, and I'll come back when I get that set up at the right length. Okay, so I'm all set up. And I'm ready to go, and I'm ready to put my warp threads on. So again, it's if I'm doing it 9 wide. The reason I'm doing it 9 wide or an odd number wide is because I want enough. I have to drop a row where I make the buttonhole. If I have 8, then the buttonhole is going to be slightly to one side or the other side. It doesn't really matter. You're not really going to see it because the button's going to cover the buttonhole. It's just me being crazy, so I like to do that. So first thing you're going to do is you're going to take your peg and you're going to find that little slit in it, and you're going to stick your thread in it. There we go. So that one went in real easy. So once I get it in there, I just take some of it from the side that's still attached to my bobbin of thread, which isn't on bobbining. I just wrap it around the peg a couple of times. This just gives me some thread to work with. You know, when I'm done, if I put enough on the side that I'm going to do on this end side when I finish, whatever my end's going to be, if I have enough left over, then I can actually sew on my button with it. But that's more than enough. You know, the peg's not very big, so I'm going to stick it in the first hole here, and I'm going to take a hold of my, oh yeah, I wanted to say one more thing. When you measure it, tighten everything up tight so it's not moving at all. You don't want this moving, or it wiggles a little tiny bit, but it's pretty solid. tighten everything up and then remeasure, because sometimes this can lean forward or lean backwards and you'll be off in your measurement, and then, you know, make sure you're right, you're good. So now that you got your peg in, you're going to come with your thread and you're going to go over the top, and I'm just holding the thread and then go over the top on the one, and then I come under here, and I should be pulling this tight, so let's pull it tight. So that counts, that one way up counts as one way down counts as two. Kind of like when I was showing you how to wrap it before. Go back under, sorry, over, and then under. So it's always over and then back under, over and then back under. So, okay. And you do this till you have the right amount of threads that you need for your particular piece. And you can scoot them together. It's not a big deal. They can, you know, come farther out, or come, as long as they stay in the same order. And you want this fairly tight because this is actually a little loose, and you can pull and tighten them if you need to. You don't want it to bow out your rods, like you don't want the rods to bend in, it's just that tight, but you want to have a little bit of stiffness here. So put on the amount of thread you need going under and over, so counting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, so forth, and when you come back I'll show you how to start this baby. Okay, so I've got my threads that I need on here for the width of the bracelet that I'm going to do, and I'm doing my 9 wide, and I double up the sides. So 2 counts for the side, so there's 1 space here, 2, 3, 4, 5 spaces, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 2 threads on the outside. So mine actually finishes in the same place it starts. So what I do is I take a peg. If it finishes on the other end, that's fine too. If you want to do something even count, your pattern's even count. And I stick one of these pegs in the same way over the thread. They're kind of like guitar tuning things. You know, if anybody's seen an end of a guitar. So you have to sort of hit the slot right. And with Nymo, it seems to go in a lot easier. There we go. So I got it in. So you can't see what I'm doing, so let me move my hands. So it's just on the peg at the moment, and then I just take it and wrap it around the peg a few times. Again, I'm not worrying too much, and I can, well, I have it around the peg. Whoops, it's slipping off the peg. I can actually take it and, like a guitar thing, I can twirl it and put it in the last hole. Or you can put it wherever it works for you. And once I space this out, I may move this over sideways. And I can see that some of my threads are a little loose. So I can literally go back and pull one direction, and then pull the other direction, and then pull the next direction up. And I'm going to take this and tweak it till it's nice and even tension across the whole thing. And then once I know that that's good and I have enough thread on here, these threads are just going to get woven in and out when you're done. And you'll have one more thread. Actually, I'm going to move this over to the second spot. You're going to have one more thread, which is going to go here, which is going to be the thread coming off your needle. If you'd like, that's how you can start it as well. So, you know, going to get these all tightened up, make them nice, make them close together the way that I want them. And you can see, you know, they're all spaced out right now. So I'm going to make them all pretty, and then I'm going to come back and show you how to put the ruler on and start the needle. And then I'll come back when I'm ready for the button after that. Okay, as you can see, I have everything set up. Everything's there. The pegs are in the bottom here. I haven't cut the final thread off yet because I want to make sure everything's good. And as I was going along, I would pull the, you know, tighten these threads up, and then I move them right close in the middle so they're a little closer together, because once I just put the Delicas in there, they're going to shrink up this space. But as you can see, there's 2 threads here, 2 threads here, 2 threads here. Whoops, it's really hard to, there's no way you could start a bead down here on this particular project. But if you look, as I bring the loom up, you can see how they separate out much better. So what you do is you take them, and because I'm doing 2, what I try to do is get them so that I'm bringing the bottom ones, the ones that are on the bottom, up and down. It doesn't really matter, just separate them out. So my first 2, and then 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, and then my last 2. because my last two are going together, right? So I just put this, you could use a business card, you could use, yeah, whatever, and then bring it down. And now if you notice, when I come back down, I've got a lot more separation in my threads, and you can start it up here. Again, you have to make sure you don't split the threads, just like in any other situation. And these two are supposed to be closer to each other, and these two are closer to each other, so it makes it a little bit easier. So now we're ready to put on there we go. Might be a little bit more focused for you. Yeah, see, when I come in, it doesn't like me. So now I'm ready to put on the thread. So once I know this is all good, my tension is good, I'm happy, everything's good, then and only then do I separate my thread off. So I just cut it off and leave it hanging. So now I need to start a new thread. So I take my third, wherever I put it, my little peg, moving stuff around trying to get the camera to work, and I can't find my peg. There it is. So got the peg. Again, you're gonna wrap some thread around the peg, put it in the slot, wrap some around, stick it in that first hole. So let's move this where you can see the, I'm just trying to make it, this one was the tighter one. And once I've used them for a while, they will loosen up a little bit. So I have to come where I can actually see, so excuse me if I'm off screen for a second. Again, I just put the thread in, I haven't done anything with it, and I just wrap it around. And you don't need to wrap it that much. And then I'm going to put it in here. And this becomes the thread that I am actually going to work with. So this is my, instead of doing a knot, this is going to be my thread. So I'm actually going to come over one with it because it's less space to go, and I'm going to be coming up quite a distance before I start. So I'm just going to take this, and it doesn't have to, it's attached to here now. I'm just going to grab myself a good 5 feet or so of thread, and then I'm going to put a needle on it, and then I'm going to be right back. So I'm back, and I have my needle on my thread, and I need to go underneath, pick up my beads, and I've already done that. I picked up my beads for the first row, and this is the hardest row. Now, all of this is available in a much better video that I can ever make. So showing you how to set this up. So if you want to see them super, super clear and you're having trouble, follow the link below. Definitely, please, 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 and see the video there. So all I'm doing right now is I need to put one bead between each string, being mindful. I'm going to give myself some, so I'm taking more thread up in this fingers here so that I'm not trying to pull against that as well. So I need to have 2 threads here, and then my first one has to go here and my second one there. Now if you're having trouble doing it that way, you can start at this side. So I have my 2 threads. I need to have 2 threads on the outside, right? Making sure I have my 2 threads. Only 2. Yeah, it looks like it's only 2. And then I can put my first bead in here. There we go. Whoop. And this first couple of rows is as hard as I'm making it look. So I'm just picking up one bead. I'm staying above so I can move everything. So at this point, they're not going to want to lay nice. So I'm taking one bead at a time, and if that's what you need to do, you need to fuss. And it literally is fussing. Okay, don't worry about it. I know it looks terribly awkward, but it's not as bad as you think. And once you get 3 rows, you're good. So there's another one I can grab. These 2, I'm almost done. I got 2 left. There we go. And you know what? Doesn't matter how many years you've been doing this. This don't get any easier. And this is the hardest one to do this with because of the way the threads want to stay together because of the way that you warp it. So then I'm going to take my thing through. And these are Delica beads. They're size 11 Delica beads. And you can see this is all going to come in quite a bit. So I'm going to just pull some of this in at the far end. I'm just taking my threads and moving them closer together. I don't know if you can see them moving slowly because I'm moving from the far end. And I can do the same with this end, as I can move them in a little bit closer together to make it easier for myself. See? There we go. So, and then I'm going to need to pull. Now I've got way too much thread here hanging. That's the original thread. So I'm going to just pull this to open this, then pull this through. So I'm shortening up the thread and I'm actually bringing it over the top. So it's over the top of the ruler, over top of the rod. Okay. And I'm pulling, and then I'm going to pull my needle back the other way again while I'm holding the beads this time. So this gets a lot shorter. Here we go. Because we're going to move this down, right? So there's my first row. Time to do my second row. So pick up my beads, and then I come underneath, or you can come underneath first and pick up your beads. Depends on where you put your beads on your board. Oops. And I'm ready for my second row. So again, this one should be a little easier to lay because everything's already there. And I also usually work in a totally different position than this. So when you have it, can get it closer to yourself, I'm, quite a distance from my body. So put that through over the top, make sure you're getting all the top. See how I can tell that bead's a little sunk underneath? There we go. So you still need to be able to see it moves quite freely. If it doesn't, you've caught something. I'm just going to double check on that one. There, we're good. So see how it's moving quite freely? That's good. And then we pull our thread to tighten, and we can bring these two together. So I'm just doing squares of color. So I've got pink and green here right now. And I've just got 4 on one side, 5 on another side. I'm going to do this for 4 rows, and then I'll be back and show you how to start the buttonhole. Okay, so I'm back, and as you can see, I have like 5 rows. The thing is I want enough on the other side of my buttonhole to not, when I take the end thread when I'm done and I weave back and forth, I can strengthen that, and it would give me enough resistance against the edge of my button. So now we're still way too far up. Like, I don't know if you know, but we're like that far up, too far. So time to move the beads down. All right. So I tend to take my one out that has this is the one that's attached to the bottom end of my needle. And I just take the whole thing and I slide it down. And I'm going to tuck this right up against. And now if you caught any threads, you're going to have trouble with that. So you have to make sure you haven't caught any threads. And you can use this to, tap it down against the side. I want it to be tight up against that side because those little tiny bit of threads that are here are the only thing, and these 2 threads here, and then of course your weaving thread are the ones that you have to deal with. But there's basically 2 warp threads that you have to deal with, and that's it. So all of these little ends disappear when you're done. So that's what's awesome about this loom. So, be patient with yourself. And as you can see, everything's, I don't know if you can see it that way, but if I put this up against here, yeah, that works. You can see how nice and evenly they're spaced out now with my 2 threads on the far sides. So now it's time to do the buttons, the actual holes. I'm going to start it with this color, and then I'm going to need to switch colors. Actually, I could switch colors now, so let's just do that. Okay, so I've got my 2 other colored beads out, ready to go. I just picked 2 others at random. The only rule I have with this pattern, because I'm making this up as I go, and there's a lot of these on the internet, and you can go check them on Pinterest and see different ways of doing them. I just do what I feel like. The only rule I have is I don't put 2 colors of the same together, and I tend not to, if I do pink here, I don't do pink here, right? The same shade. I tend to make sure there's at least one color space separation in any direction. But if I want to do green here and then green here again, I can do it. If I want to do only 2 rows of something, I can do it. And then 4 rows. So I'm not going to leave the rows perfectly squared off with each other. I'm actually going to make this pink 1 row longer, and then I'm going to switch to the other color. So yeah, so let's pick up some beads. Now the other thing you need to know is about your button. So I've decided I'm going to go with this one. I just like it. I don't know why, I do. So what you need to figure out is how much space this covers, right? So you need to have your button with you when you're doing it. And you're going to start your hole, and then you're going to continue working up. And I can face mine down so it's smaller. So I'm going to keep working, and then I'm going to put this on here as I work, and I'm going to measure my button against the size of my hole so that I know that I need it to have at least a couple of beads, if not 3 beads, bigger than the size of the button, like 3 of the Delicas, even maybe 4, so that I have space to put the button in, because it'll open up the material, right? Because this is going to be, you know, there's going to be just a hole in the middle, just like a normal buttonhole. Okay, so let's pick up some beads. So I need to do 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, and I'm only going to work on 1/2 of this. So I'm going to take my 4, and I know where 4 is, which is right here, right? There's my 4, my space for 4. See, you can see there's 1, 2, 3, 4, and then there's 4 on this side. See how there's space for 4 on this side? And I'm not going to put anything in that middle, where this middle bead is, which is the middle bead. So there's 4 pink beads and 5 of the green beads. So right in the middle here, I'm not going to put a bead. So now I'm going to bring my needle up in that space, right? Bring my beads to where I need them to be. I'm going to put them in those 4 slots, just like you were doing it normally. Okay, and I'm going to work across those, and I'm going to catch on the corner here, so I don't want to do that, and I'm done with the next set in. Okay, and what's going to happen is when you put the other side in, it's going to grab those 4 and it's going to leave a hole in the midwood bead. Isn't that cool? So this thread is, this inside thread here is captured by this grouping, and this inside thread on this side is captured by this grouping. So you have no loose threads, but you have a hole. And once you get both sides, like get the one side done as long as you think you're going to need. So I'm going to lay this on here, and I'll come back and show you when I've got it laid on, when I think I'm long enough. Then I'm going to start another thread, and I'm going to weave it through here a couple of times, and then I'm going to start my next thread and do up the same distance. And then I'm going to double check that, you know, if I go to slide my button through the middle of it, you know, once it's done, that it'll fit. I'll be back when I get there. Okay, so I'm back, and I want to show you, I've done a few, I changed colors. I'm on my 3rd color change now. So I'm looking at my button. So this is on a bit of a slope. The whole thing slopes. So when you put your button on, it's going to slide. But the whole idea is I put my button on, and I can see that I have 2 rows below my button when I put it in the middle, and 2 rows above my button. So I have enough space so that my button will fit in here. See, I need my button to be able to fit in here. So now I'm ready to, I'm going to leave this thread attached in this needle. Don't need to take it off. I'm going to cut myself a shorter piece of thread, really short, like, I don't know, short. I'm going to weave it in and out of here on these last 2 rows. I'm going to go all the way across the row and all the way back, especially the 2nd row here. I want to try to get at least 3 threads in that last row, and that's because that's going to be the place where the button is going to pull against. So I want that, you know, that to be as strong as it can in that spot there. So I'm going to start my other thread, and I'm going to work beads up on this side till I get to here, and then I'll show you what to do next. Okay, so I've taken my new thread, and I probably did 45 inches or so. It wasn't half a wingspan, not even that. And I started here, and I went back and forth through here, up through this one, back down, back down. So I came out right here beside this pink, last pink bead, so that I could drop my thread down so that it's on the other side of where that split is. And I know that the white will help you see a little bit, but sometimes it makes it worse. So see how my thread's on the other side of the, so now I have those 4 spots to do my weaving. I just wanted to show you that that's where you want to get your thread to, and how you do that, how you get there, you know, how you weave in and out doesn't really matter. Just get it there so it's good and secure. And if you're worried about splitting the threads, you will need to be able to massage the beads some. then, you know, just leave your tail out here hanging out and then come to here and then drop your thread down and drop your needle down. And you can worry about working those in after we get the bead settled. But you'll see that if you watch the whole video, how we settle the beads at the end before we finish it. So, and so on the button, and that way, you don't have to worry about that. So if you're fairly new at this and you split threads easily, then definitely do that. And the other thing I do is I always push up from the bottom, and I actually take my thumb, this is a really weird angle, but I go like this and push so that it forces the row of beads up to the top, and they're, you know, as high as I can get them over the warp thread. Okay, so I've got the other side done. I've left the needle and thread here underneath. I just, you know, got it out of the way. I just brought it around the front here. So that's from this side, you can see. And I will go back with that needle and thread once I get this established up here. And I will sew back through these beads, across here, and then back up through these beads. I'm going to reinforce around this hole. You know, I can do that now, or I can do it after I take it off the loom. Either way works. I'm going to do it now. I changed button color. This is really sort of dull old men's shirts kind of color, and I just felt the other button was too dull, so it doesn't go that way up. But it made me think of that I needed to have like a white shirt button, and I will even possibly raid my tin to you know, figure out what color button I'm going to use. But this is more like I may have an old, actually yellowed button that's in a box, a tin that smells musty. You know, you've had one Grandma gave me. Yeah, one of those. So I may actually even use one of those for this. But then the button wants to slide off because this is on a slant. So everything's on a slant. So I just, there's the button. So I'm thinking that works way better. And it will definitely fit inside of here. No trouble. So basically, if I'm holding this here, if I hold my warp threads at the top here together, so I'm going to pretend there's beads in there, and I can stick it through without it pulling my fingers apart or pulling the warp threads out. So see how I'm holding right at the end of those beads, I'm holding the warp thread. So this is my test, my button size. And because I still have my threads on both sides, I could add another row or two if I needed to before I bring everything back together again. And I'm going to check and see that goes through just fine. Okay, so that goes through with this staying together up here. And I can't think of another way to show you. Yeah, but you get the idea. So then now you have to add that one bead back. So I've got my 2 needles on. Let's get that one out of the way. And my other needle, I've already got the beads on. So I'm continuing the beads from here, which is 4. Now I need to put a bead back in the middle and then put the 4 on the other side. So I decided to make that middle bead. I'm going to switch this around so it's a little bit less hard for me to get at it. There we go. So I take it and literally shove my beads up there, and then I hold my finger against from underneath, and then I put my needle through, making sure I'm not catching anything. And if I can tell by the bead height, by the shadow of the bead height, if it's high enough. So I've added the new bead here. And I'm just continuing with the thread that came up this side. Once I get a couple of rows, if I wanted to, I could bring my thread back through again. Again, it's the whole, see, now I have a buttonhole. I have a buttonhole. Isn't that cool? So let me just, I don't know if that helps you. There we go. So you can see the buttonhole. So that's cool. So now I'm just going to continue for the full length till I get all the way up to the other end. And then I'm going to show you how you cram in the last few beads. Now, I'm not pulling tight this, I'm not pulling terribly tight this way. Sorry, this way on my, when I'm looming. I don't want to pull tight. I'm just leaving them sit. And as you can see, I can still move these beads. See how they all move? So all I'm doing is pushing them down so they're against each other. All right, so continue to do that until you get real, like 2 beads away from the end. It's going to be really tough when you get to about the 3rd row from the end. It's going to get really tight because remember how tight it was down here? So that's why we had to start up higher. But keep going, and I'll come back when I get to the very end, and then I'll show you how to get that last couple of beads in. Okay, so the whole thing is done. You can see the whole thing, and I'm trying to get it close up enough that you can see. I have a couple more rows to do, so I'm going to zoom in. Okay, so what I want you to see is how close these are together and how they go up to a V. And as you get closer to the top V, it's going to be harder and harder to get your beads in. So you're going to have to, do one at a time from this side where you put your thread back through and push them in. So I'm going to put it down farther down now, and I'm going to start putting my next row of beads in and the next row of beads, and then I'm going to go from there. See how if I can get a 3rd row in. Okay, so let's go for some beads. I need a little bit more thread here, so this looks like I've got 5 wide of those. I'm just picking up beads, 4 or 5, and they're just off the camera here. And I also raided my button stash, and I found an old button, a 2-hole button that had been around for a long time. So I grabbed this. So this is the button that I'm going to use. I think it looks great with this. And yeah, it's in my old antique tin of button stash that people have given me over the years that's been hanging around. So one of the places that's a great place to get buttons, whether you realize it or not, is when you buy a shirt or something. Oftentimes it'll come with an extra button or a button in a bag sort of thing, depending on where you're purchasing it. So as you can see, I'm just doing 1 bead at a time and making sure I'm getting above. So I'm having trouble with that one. I'm going to pull my needle through for a minute so I can not worry about those. So this next bead here is getting squished in behind. So I got to pick it up, try to get it to come to the forward. So this is a little fiddly with this Bricks Loom, and it just means being patient, and I'm still not getting it. So I need to get this in a camera view that I can see. But you get the idea. You have to get them same as you normally do. And I'll just fast forward through me working on this. Okay, so it looks like I can get 1 more beads in there. And it's really tight to get that 1 more in. So what I'm going to do now is massage my beads. You can see I can just get 1 more set in there. So before I try and do that and make it harder on myself, I'm going to I'm just going to hold on to this so I don't want to pull against it, and I'm just going to massage my beads. And I'm wanting to bunch them up on purpose at this point. I'm wanting to make a little bit of space. See how I'm making more space there? And they're gonna be bunchy and all kind of funny. See how they're all bunchy and funny right here? Do that. It's important because you need to have that extra bunching so that when you smooth things out, this will work. And that's one of the things that make this whole process much easier is if you bunch your beads first. So just bunch them up a little bit just near the one end here. Put in your extra row of beads. And when I get that done, we'll be back and we'll take it off the loom and go from there. Okay, I want to show you I got that last row of beads in. There we go. And so I have them in. They're where they're supposed to be. I still have my thread attached. I'll take care of that in a couple of minutes. So now I have everything on the loom, and you can sort of see both ends here. And all I'm going to do is this end here first, the top end that doesn't have any threads or any knobs here. I'm just going to pull one side off. Doesn't matter which side you pull off. And you're going to pull the rod out. And you're going to have furries on the end, and I'll show you those in a second. And then the other end, you're going to pull your knobs out and just take your, I just unwind the threads that are on the pegs. You get these curly threads. I'll show you those in a second. And then I just pull that other knobby off and pull this one out. Okay, so we've freed the beads. And I just usually put this back together again real quickly so I don't lose any of the parts. Stick the knobs back in, and I'll come back and show you the beaded bracelet. Okay, so we have the whole thing done, and I want to just quickly show you you have these little loops at the end, and this is the end that still has the needle attached. And then the other end, where the buttonhole is, where we started, you have the same thing. You have those little, I don't know if you can see those, but it's the same thing. And then you have all these curly threads. So you're going to have to move your beads around. So this is where you're massaging the beads comes in. Now remember how we bunched up the beads here? I'm going to take it and I'm just going to rub my fingers against it, and I'm going to start to slowly, hopefully you can see this, I'm slowly, look at the cords are disappearing. Now see how there's an open space there? I got to massage them evenly. And it's making some spaces here, which is fine. I'll fix that later. Okay, so now I'm going to do that with the whole bracelet. I'm going to just massage the whole thing and even out all the beads. Make sure there's none of those little weird gaps like this that are happening. I'm doing it in my hands. I would normally do it on a flat surface. So just so you know. So yeah, just work on that and getting those in, and you need to do that with the other end too. And nothing's going to fall off. You don't have to worry about that. And then we'll come back. Okay, so as you can see, I don't have any, you have just a little, see the little tiny thread that goes across the top? That's all it'll show. And on the other end, it's the same thing. I just have the little tiny thread across the top, and that's all that's showing. I wish it would focus for me, it'd be nice. There we go. So you have the thread going across the top there too, and that's all you have going across that top. So now all you have to do is work your threads in. So we'll just start with the side that has the needle still attached. I'm going to reinforce. I'm going to go through this next row, back through the first row, back through part of the second row, part of the third row, fourth row, back. And you know, I'm going to try to get at least 2 more threads into this first row just to secure everything down and make sure everything's happy. So let's just start. So I've got it here. I can't obviously go any further, and I just lost a bead somehow. So I didn't have that secured in properly. So that's good to know. I missed securing that in around the end. So I'm going to have to attach that when I go back. So I'm just taking my, and stuff like that happens. You know how I was doing my thread back and forth? So I'm just going around the warp thread there, and then I'm going to go back through this first loop. Now normally you don't lose a bead, but I messed up, so I lost a bead. But see, it's fixable. And I can see the little loop from my warp thread on this side, so I could just go around into it with my needle, and the bead's back. Everybody's happy. So I go through my second row, my whole row, and I'm just, you know, making sure I stay in the beads. I don't want to pop out of the beads. I'm going to go back through my first row again. So now that'll be my third pass through. There we go. So I'm happy now with the ending here. It's much more secure. And second row. And then I'll start to just do part rows in the middle without going across the bottom edge here. So when I get into the third row, I won't go all the way to the last bead. I'll go part way. Let's see, we'll go to here. See, I'm just going part way. See if you can see this here. Come on. There we go. So see, I'm only going part way, and then I'm going to go, you know, back down the other row. I'm just doing part ways, right? So, and I'm going to just weave my thread a few times to get everything happy. And I'll do the same with the other end. And the other end, I have 3 threads to work in. So I have the one thread that was my 2 threads that were my warp threads, and 1 thread that was where I started my weaving. So I'll do the one where I started my weaving first, and then my warp threads I'll weave them back and through, and I'll probably make sure one warp thread reinforces this side of the buttonhole and the other warp thread reinforces the other side of the buttonhole. Now if you can see, when you see things like that, when I reinforce, it'll help straighten it, but you could also stick your fingernail in, or something, even something that's not sharp, that you can just sort of like this with each of the rows of beads and sort of make them straight, because they still are movable on the actual thread. But that'll get taken care of when I tighten everything up when I reinforce. So I'm going to do all the reinforcement, and then I'll come back and we will sew the button on and we'll be done. Okay, so we're ready to put the button on, and what I did is I just took it up, my thread up as I was weaving it in, and I finished it in the center, and now we're ready to do a square stitch, and I'm just going to do sort of a row of square stitch, one on top of each of these. So all I'm going to do is take my needle, I came out where I wanted my square stitch, and this is to raise the button up, and because my holes are pretty big in my button, and the beads would just drop right through the holes, and that would make it hard for it to be raised up. So I'm going to just use the center row because I have, I have 4 on this side, 4 on the side. I have 9 altogether. So the one in the middle here becomes, so I picked up a bead. I have a bead on my thing, and I'm just going to wrap around just like a square stitch. If I can get it to just go in the one, I'm just moving it around to get my needle in a better position. There we go. So I just got the one, just like a regular square stitch, nothing spectacular. So I want them one to lay on top of the other because I'm making this little row of square stitch. And then I'm coming out the bottom so I can come up this next one. There we go. So I'm up the next one. So I just went from one to the next. I'm going to pick up another bead, come around. And what I'm doing is, besides catching my thread on everything, what I'm doing here is setting up a little row. I don't know if you can see that. A little row of beads that I can have a place to sew my button into. So that's going to be a place I can come down and round and round and around and around. That will keep my button raised up 1 bead height away. So because this is 1 bead height thick, it will be the right distance for what I need to do. So I'm going to do this one more time, move over 1 more square. So 3 should be more than enough. So I'm just moving over 1 more square. I'm putting my needle through and then back out the other side, and then I'm picking up a bead and coming back around again. The bead will get on my needle. And just 1 more bead. There we go. So I have 3, so I'm going to come back up this one here. It's the top one. So now I'm at the top. You see I'm coming out the top bead, and I'm just going to go back into the second bead, and then back into the third bead, and I'm just building a little bridge, just strengthening these, just doing a little figure 8 across them. There's lots of other ways I'm sure I could do this, but this is the way I'm choosing to do it. Okay, so I'm just building, this is just a little platform that my button's going to sit on. So I've gone back and forth twice. You can see, if I can get this to focus there. So there's a little bit of thread, but it's be under the button, and they're just sitting on top, just like that. So now I just need to, I'm coming out the one side. As long as I'm coming out the one side, I'm going to pick up enough beads that are going to go through. It's going to come up from underneath and through the button and back down without adding more height. So I think this is the right amount for me. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I sort of checked, but I want to come back down the other side of the button. And I'm just going to double check. Yeah, so it looks like I have the right amount of beads. What I'm checking for is that once the beads are nice and tight, they're not going to add any more height. So now I can come the other way. So the thread's coming out this direction on this one, and I'm going to come in this direction on this one. Right? And I'm just going to reinforce my thread, and I'm just going to go around the button a couple times. So let's just do this one first. Come through here, go underneath that. Try not to catch anything. And tighten down. Okay, so my button is now on. See, my button's on. So now I need to go back and go through, I'm going to go through this one, back up the beads, again, back down the beads. I'm just going to keep going around and around and around and around. So as you can see, this is what it looks like right now. So I'm going to come back in this way And this one, I'm just going to do it without tightening it up. And then I'm going to come back up the beads. So I got to untwist my button here. There we go. So I would come back up these beads here. Hopefully you can see what I'm doing. And then back up to the top of my button, go through the rest of the beads. You get the idea. So all I'm doing is reinforcing those beads that are on the top of my button and down the side. And I need to do that like 3 times minimum. With the CLon, it's pretty strong. And if you're using Fireline to do this, it would be even stronger. Well, probably not, but maybe. I just used the thread that I've already been using through the whole project. So let's tighten all this up because it's all loose now. So it's going to take a little bit of squiggling and wiggling. And I'm going to come back down the other side. And once I get, this is a little bit fiddly, and I usually tighten it as I go, so it's not tightening the way I want it to. So you can see there's threads hanging, so I'm going to have to work on tightening it properly. Normally I don't let it stay loose like that. And then once I get it all nice and tightened the way that I like it, then I'm going to knot underneath here. So I'm just going to grab a hold and make knots underneath. You know, just bring it around, do the twice through the loop to secure my work. I just got to tighten it a little bit more. There we go. And as you can see, the button sits 1 bead height above. So when I have the other piece come down here, there's space. So I got to reinforce it one more time, tie off the knots, and then we'll come back and see the finished bracelet. Okay, I want to show you. Okay, so I want to show you I've got all my threads through, and so this is just how I do a knot. I just take it, put it through the bead. I should have done it. And then I come around. You just come around the hole in the center, and I just take my thread and go around it through the loop once, twice, and I just pull. And then I take my thread, you know, through a new place that's not super clogged up. There we go. Now if you want to at this point, you can take this back down and into the bracelet and reinforce a little bit there if you feel like you need to. But basically you just need to work your way enough that you can, see, I'm back into the bracelet now. So I don't know if you can see that I'm into the bracelet. So now I can just work my way across and reinforce this a little bit more. Because this is where the pull is going to be. See, I just went through that row of beads. And it just, if you're having trouble finding them, just go slow. It's not a race. It's not about going super fast. It's about getting through them. So I'm just reinforcing those beads underneath and making sure they're good so that when I'm pulling all the time on them, they're not going to stretch out of place. Come through this one more time, and I came through the whole leg. That's fine. And if you're not sure, you can double check on the back side, but my finger's back there and I can actually feel that there's nothing, no needle coming out because it would poke me if it did. So I'm just reinforcing these few rows prior to where my button is with leftover thread that I have. I'm just tightening these up and making sure that they're going to be able to handle the tug of somebody putting this on and off. And then I would take my, this is way more secure than I'm ever going to need, take it part way through. And I always like to finish my threads on the inside. And I used to use tension to cut it off, and I don't have any little threads or anything hanging. You can see there's no threads hanging anywhere that you can really see. So yeah, so everything's good. So we now have a finished bracelet, and as you can see, it goes on quite easily over top, and you have this lovely bracelet that sits just the way you'd want it to be. This is your bottom of it, this is your top. It's sort of a vintage country quilt. So you can see the vintage colors. It reminds me of worn out shirts. So I have to come up with a name for it. Maybe some of you guys can figure out what to call this. But basically it's just vintage colors. So you've got, I don't know if you can see this. I don't know if the colors are true. But you've got the greens and the creams and the, it's all the vintage, old vintage, like an old vintage album or shirt when it's been aged and it's been washed too many times, and you know how it gets sort of that dingy, aged look. So that's what this looks like. So yeah, and everything's nice and happy and it's good and strong. So I hope you learned something about making a buttonhole and using the Rix Loom. Again, there's going to be more more information below. Please, please check it. I know people often need really, really, really clear videos to see how to do something new. I'm going to put the Rix Loom videos from the actual guy who made the loom, and he shows how to start and stop his, how to set up his loom, how to start and stop, set everything up, how to actually bead on it. Please go check those out, because he has lots of money, and well, not necessarily, but he has the equipment and the ability to produce really good clear films that you can see really easily. So I hope you like this video. I hope you learned something from it, and take care and keep on making from Annie's Makings. Bye.